So let's put the coronavirus aside for a moment and let's forget the short-term massive drop in oil prices. Let's take a longer-term view. We know energy is limited on this planet, but it's also been getting cheaper, not just lately, but in the longer term. So that means we can use more of it because it's costing less. And we know if we put the price up, because we think we should, it's the poor who suffers the most. That's what sparked the riots in Paris. So short of placing limits on the amount of energy we all consume, how do we limit our appetite for energy? And can we do it without destroying the world economy? More than has been done by the coronavirus. And importantly, can we do it when power creation and distribution is largely in the hands of private companies? We're going to look at all of that today on the Debunking Economics podcast. So, Steve, I guess there's two stories there, isn't there? One is our use of power, and the other is who owns our energy companies. Energy companies obviously want us to pay more. So either they're going to charge us more, but they're in competition with other power companies, so it makes it hard for them to do that. That keeps prices down. So the only thing is to get our usage up. Theoretically, that's where we are. That's not a good place to be, is it? Really,
not at all. I mean, and we've again, I blame economist, particular William Nordhaus, for us being in the situation we're in, because the load we're putting on the planet fundamentally comes down to the amount of energy we're extracting out of the planet and dumping into the biosphere, and the impact that has upon the ecosystem in general. And if you go back 50 years, which is roughly when the limits to growth came out, then fast forward from there, we've pretty much doubled population and doubled energy consumption per head, which means our load on the planet is 4 times what it was back then. And that is a major part of why we're having climate breakdown right now. It's really dumping too much energy into the biosphere and extracting too much from it and damaging the web of life on which our economy depends. That whole concept is completely absent from mainstream economics.
And yet, you look at governments and they're trying to protect us against rising power prices because first of all, old people can't afford to heat their homes in winter, perhaps, but also it holds back companies as well in terms of how much output they can produce, and the impact that has on the economy. But prices are actually going up in the UK. If the average annual electricity bill in the UK in 1996 for a household that was using 6,000 kilowatt hours was, in real terms, about £344 a year. That bill, so obviously adjusted for inflation, the same energy consumption today, the cost is £972. So that is a threefold increase over and above the inflation over those years. So we are paying more for it, but we are also consuming a similar amount as well. Interestingly, we're not actually pushing up our consumption at the household level now, even at a company level. I don't think we are too much. So it's sort of leveled off. So does that mean it's less of an issue?
No, because it's been relocated to China. And so if you look at the energy consumption per head in America, that peaked in about 1973, which was, of course, the first oil crunch.
Still, by the way, about twice what it is in the UK. Same in Australia, about twice what it is in the UK.
So the energy consumption per head has stabilised while, to some extent, GDP has risen. However, when you look at it, of course, one of our earlier conversations, the workers haven't seen the increase in their standard of living. Particularly, it's been stagnant at pretty much 1970s level for most of the Anglo-Saxon countries.
And their power bills have gone up as well
at the same time. So we are getting really caught in a quandary because nothing happens without energy. This is the blind spot in mainstream economic theory. Nothing happens without energy, and yet what we're doing because of energy is generating waste. Not necessarily the worst form of that is the generation of carbon dioxide as a waste, because there's plenty of other waste products we're pumping into the environment as well, which are damaging the capacity of the environment to support our economy, which is that's the major danger we face right now. So if you have private companies in charge of energy production and distribution, they're going to slog as much of the stuff as they damn well can.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the danger. We are flogging too much of it already.
Yeah. And there's two issues there, isn't there? Because on the one side, yes, they're going to, because they've got to make money, they're going to sell as much as they possibly can, and they are going to push prices up as far as they can as well, obviously, because they want to make a profit. But there's also the whole issue about because this is such an essential and it's such an inelastic good. Yeah, particularly you get amongst poor people, they do need to heat their house. They've got no choice. So there's also the issue that obviously private companies are less concerned about, which is not a question about the planet. It's a question about the distribution of wealth. The bottom quintile of households spend about 10% of their income on energy. The top quintile spend about 2% of their income on it. So if you push the price up even more because you think, well, we've got to push the price up because that's how we're going to control usage, then you're just going to hit the poor. And
that's what's happened with the Gilets jaunes in France.
Exactly.
And that's the dilemma about using carbon pricing and indeed using carbon taxation, because that is an impost on the cost of the energy, which falls most on the poor.
Yeah.
And there's simply no way that's going to work. So I'm a critic of the idea of carbon taxes, because that would work if you didn't have the situation you've just outlined a moment ago, that the poor spend 10%, the rich spend 2%. But in fact, it's in terms of the contribution, in terms of energy consumption and carbon dioxide generated, the rich generate far more than the poor do. So you have to find some system that imposes that limit on the rich rather than on the poor.
So what do you do? So one thing the government's tried to do, but they haven't done it very well, is say, well, okay, we'll introduce price caps in the UK. So we'll protect, people being charged too much for power. Not looking at the planet, just looking at how old people can afford to heat their homes. But what they do is they take the average wholesale price, which moves up and down, and then they say, okay, you can have an extra margin for profit on top of that, and there's got to be some plans available which are at that level. But of course, that's adjusted for wholesale price. So people, you're just moving the lowest prices. I'm not sure if that achieves too much.
No, my feeling has become that we simply can't price. We can't find the right price for carbon. The whole idea that and this is, again, neoclassical thinking, set the price right and everything else follows. So whack on a price for the externality and everything will work out fine. No concept of the distribution of income inside that. Okay, using supply and demand curve intersecting. You're not looking at the individual impact of the distribution of wealth that's involved in that. So
does that mean we can't similarly find the right price for energy in that case?
Yeah, potentially. You want a price which gives you a positive return. But in terms of such a thing as the right price, no way. My line always used to be, what price of carbon is going to stop us melting Antarctica? Now, you can't know that. What you can know, to some degree, with rather more precision, is what quantity of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to melt Antarctica. And that means that you're better off easier to work out a ration per head than it is to work out a price per litre. And that is what I'm now arguing in favour of. We should actually have two prices.
Big rationing use.
So rationing is coming. I mean, we have. I mean, I know that we've got some climate change skeptics on the Patreon supporters, so you're not going to agree with this. But we have so massively dumped carbon into the environment, and many other loads on the planet as well, that we are going to be forced to ration at some point.
And there's a lot more to this thinking, including how it could actually help wealth distribution as well. So if you want to hear this thought expanded on for a full half hour, then listen to the full half hour podcast. To do that, you need to become a subscriber at debunkingeconomics.com or become a supporter of Steve Keen on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Prof Steve Keen. If you become a supporter, you'll get access to this in full and all the other podcasts in this series. I'm Phil Dobbie. We'll catch you again here soon. Thank you.